Welcome to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in China in the past 24 hours. The biggest story today is that US China technology competition is now moving into capital markets in a very real way. SpaceX is reportedly excluding investors from mainland China and Hong Kong from its IPO, and OpenAI is likely to follow the same playbook when it goes public later this year. That is a major escalation in tech decoupling. For years, Washington has focused on export controls, investment screening, tariffs, and cutting China off from the most sensitive chips and AI infrastructure. Now the issue is ownership itself. Who gets to buy into the crown jewels of U.S. strategic technology? And the answer increasingly looks like not Beijing, not Hong Kong-based capital, and not anyone who creates national security heartburn. That matters because SpaceX and OpenAI are not ordinary Silicon Valley unicorns with hoodie energy and an unlimited LaCroix budget. They sit directly inside the U.S. national security ecosystem. SpaceX reportedly generated around $4 billion in U.S. government revenue last year, and OpenAI has announced work providing AI technologies for classified Defense Department systems. So when these firms start keeping Chinese investors away from public offerings, it is not just corporate caution. It is a signal to the entire market. The vibe is, if your company matters to U.S. defense, intelligence, space, or AI dominance, you may need to think very carefully before letting Chinese capital anywhere near the cap table. And Beijing is not just sitting there watching the movie with popcorn. China is trying to build its own technology stacks, and one of the more interesting moves is in AI. The National Data Administration is now pushing what it calls the C1, or token, economy. Tokens are the basic units that large language models process, but Beijing sees them as more than a nerdy accounting tool. It wants them to become measurable, priceable, and tradable units that connect data, compute, models, and commercial demand. That is very China. Identify a new market before it fully exists, define the vocabulary, write the rules, bless the platforms, and then tell everyone this was organic innovation. Sure, pal. China Telecom is moving fast here. It launched Xingchen Token Hub, a platform that aggregates models, routes requests, meters token usage, and links into its compute scheduling system. Chairman Ke Ruiwen has framed this as moving from selling traffic to selling tokens. That is a serious shift. China Telecom is also pulling cloud firms, chip makers, model developers, security companies, and state-owned enterprises into a token ecosystem alliance. The key point for listeners is simple. Beijing wants the AI application layer to develop inside a managed system, with state-backed platforms in the middle, and domestic chips, domestic clouds, and domestic models all fighting for position inside that arena. The space race tells a similar story, but with a bigger gap. SpaceX's reported $75 billion IPO is firing up Chinese commercial space firms, including Landspace and Space, which are advancing IPO or pre-IPO plans. China's commercial space market could become enormous by 2030, but investor excitement is running ahead of proven capability. SpaceX has reusable rockets, Starlink direct-to-device ambitions, and a vertically integrated model where the satellite business creates demand for the launch business. That is a machine. China's private space sector is still more like a workshop with big dreams. It's strong state backing and a few missing parts. The missing parts are important. Chinese firms have not yet successfully launched reusable rockets. Landspace's Zhuge 3 booster test in December failed to complete a controlled landing and was not recovered. China's two major Starlink-style systems, Guowang and Qianfan, have only a few hundred satellites in orbit, while Starlink has roughly 10,400. One Chinese space executive estimated that China may match Starlink's current scale around 2033, and even that target keeps moving. If Starship works as intended, the gap could widen fast. So yes, Chinese commercial space is heating up. But for now, SpaceX is still driving the Cybertruck, and everyone else is checking whether the garage door opens. Now to the South China Sea, where Beijing decided to make things personal. China sanctioned Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro, along with his wife and child, barring them from mainland China, Hong Kong, and Macau. Beijing accused him of making repeated, erroneous remarks about China. The real issue is that Teodoro has been blunt about Chinese pressure and aggression, including at the Shangri-La Dialogue, where he described China as a severe threat to the Philippines territorially and politically. Manila is not treating this like a routine diplomatic annoyance. Teodoro said he would keep doing his duty in the face of the wickedness China is committing in Philippine waters. The Philippine Armed Forces called the sanctions ungrounded and said they would not stop patrols in the South China Sea. Foreign Minister Ma Teresa Lazaro said Manila still prefers diplomacy, but the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs called the sanctions an unfriendly act. The strategic takeaway is that Beijing is using personal punishment as a pressure tool against officials who publicly challenge its maritime claims. It is intimidation dressed up as policy. With the subtlety of a villain monologue. On the intelligence front, China confirmed the arrest of Yu Minzin, a U.S.-linked Myanmar scholar, on suspicion of spying and endangering Chinese national security. He is the executive director of ISP Myanmar, a Thailand-based think tank focused on Myanmar, including China's role and influence there. He is also identified as a UC Berkeley PhD student. He was reportedly arrested at Kunming Airport after attending a June 3rd meeting. That timing is the flashing red light. Myanmar junta leader Min Aung Hlaing is scheduled to visit China from June 15th to 19th at Xi Jinping's invitation. So this is not just a legal case floating in space. It lands right before a major Beijing-Myanmar engagement in a border region where China's security interests, junta politics, and U.S.-linked analysis all overlap. Taiwan's diplomatic space also got a small but meaningful boost. Somaliland opened a new representative office in Taipei, and its representative, Mahmoud Adam Jama Galal, said Somaliland has the right to choose its own relationships. Beijing and Mogadishu have pressured Somaliland over its Taiwan ties, but Galal said that pressure has not worked. Taiwan's Deputy Foreign Minister Francois Wu framed the relationship around democracy, freedom, and rule of law. The strategic relevance is bigger than the office ribbon cutting. China has nearly squeezed Taiwan out of Africa diplomatically, with Eswatini remaining Taiwan's only full African diplomatic partner. Somaliland sits on the Horn of Africa, a location that matters, and its continued engagement with Taiwan pokes Beijing right in the sovereignty narrative. Europe is still trying to manage China without blowing up the trade relationship. As an update to a theme we've been tracking, French President Emmanuel Macron hosted a video call on global imbalances ahead of the June 15 to 17 G7 summit in Evian-les-Bains. Chinese Vice Premier Zhang Guoqing joined, which is unusual because Beijing normally treats the G7 like a private club. It would rather heckle from outside. Zhang called for cooperation and a more open trade environment. Macron warned that unmanaged imbalances could unwind in a disorderly way. The heart of the issue is Chinese strength in electric vehicles, lithium-ion batteries, and high-tech exports. Europe sees industrial risk. Germany, though, remains cautious because China is still a major export market. Beijing is also pushing a maritime counterintelligence warning that sounds like a rejected plot from a low-budget spy movie, except the underlying issue is serious. China's Ministry of State Security claimed foreign intelligence services are using detection buoys, wave gliders, commercial shipborne electronics, and even sensor-fitted marine animals to collect sensitive maritime data. Yes, they actually talked about spy turtles and spy fish. Behind the comedy is a real intelligence concern. Data on water temperature, salinity, currents, seabed terrain, vessel activity, and submarine acoustic signatures can help with undersea warfare and maritime targeting. The ministry gave few specifics, but China is clearly telling its public and maritime industry to treat the ocean as an intelligence battlefield. Finally, the tactical picture around Taiwan and Japan remained active, but it is best understood as strategic signaling. Taiwan reported 14 PLA aircraft sorties by 6 a.m. on June 12th, with 13 crossing the Taiwan Strait median line into northern and southwestern airspace. It also tracked 9 Chinese warships and 4 government vessels. Japan reported that the Chinese intelligence collection ship Kaiyangxing, hull 796, transited the Osumi Strait toward the Pacific on June 10th while being monitored by the JMSDF missile boat Otaka. Taiwan's HIMARS testing also drew Chinese state media attention, after reported launch problems, with 4 of 36 planned practice rockets failing to fire. The bigger story is not the misfires. It is the contest over deterrence, surveillance, and whether Taiwan can make invasion planning painful enough that Beijing keeps choosing pressure over war. Thanks for listening. If this was useful, a quick review or comment helps others find the show. For deeper coverage, check out our daily intel brief on Substack at restrictedhandling.substack.com. Have a great weekend.